Morning, everyone. This is Preston Bryant, privileged to be chair of the Library of Virginia Board. Welcome. I will read down, I guess, the quick roll call.
I'll tell you later. Okay.
So we have Johnson Bowles, Vice Chair, Laura Blevins, Paul Brockwell, Mark Embledge, Muhammad Eslami, Barbara Vines Little, Mark Miller, Shelley Murphy, Blythe Scott, Marcy Sims, and Leonard Tingo. Has Robert Aguirre joined us yet? Or has Cham Light joined us yet? And I believe Maya Castillo is not able to join us. So we have almost a full house. So we certainly have a quorum, is that correct?
That is correct.
And we'll keep an eye out should the three other board members join us. So this is our first, sadly, our first virtual meeting. Hopefully we hope it'll be our last virtual meeting, but we will see. The public has joined us or has the option to join us by the YouTube channel. So we welcome anyone who may be viewing this meeting. Obviously, a lot is going on in the world. The pandemic continues to plague us, so to speak. Economic disruption, social reckoning and advancing in awareness and progress. We do hope we can watch going on around us. And all of this reminds us of the value of libraries and archives. And we know that the Library of Virginia has considerable resources on African-American history and going back to the 1600s, and the library and the staff is making every effort to make sure folks know those resources so that we can continue learning about our past and learning from our past. We all know the many exhibits that the library has been having over the years and decades on Virginia's changing population and dynamics as we celebrate our rich and changing history and population. So libraries are important, our archives are important, especially in times like these. With that, let me call on Sandy, the librarian of Virginia, Sandy Treadway, to say a word or two about the library and its resources and what they are doing to make our resources better known to all during these times. Sandy?
Well, that's something we've been doing, as Preston just said, ongoing for years. But in light of the present situation, we definitely wanted to highlight some things that we thought would be especially of a special interest and relevance with the movements going around us. So one of the things, we did when the whole Black Lives Matter and protests started, we issued a very short statement, basically just acknowledging what we were hearing and observing, but with the emphasis on listening. That basically we wanted, this wasn't a time for us to be solving people's problems. It was a time for us to listen to the concerns and determine ways we could respond. But shortly thereafter, we did post on our blog. It's called the Uncommonwealth, and we cover a myriad of topics there. But we did issue a statement that directly linked to what was happening in the world around us, but also linked back to the names, the voices, and the stories that are found and surfaced through the library's collections. So it is now on our main webpage. We have a banner across the top, and if you the screen rotates periodically, or you can click to advance it. And the second item that's there is a direct link to this blog. I do encourage you to read it because it does point out resources for understanding the African American experience that we have, especially through Virginia Untold, and through our online newspapers and other things. And we'll be continuing to do that as we always have through the coming days and months. I should tell you that several years ago, we did a blog post on the Robert E. Lee statue in Richmond, long before any of the present circumstances arose. And we told the story in that blog of how that statue went up, why it went up, and we reported the ceremonies and all that from the mainstream press, and then from the Richmond Planet, which was the leading African-American paper at the time. Two different perspectives, obviously. And when the current situation came to the fore, that blog post was accessed and discovered by people. And we had folks like Jennifer McClellan and others in government that were quoting from it. And especially important was that was one of the few places where the voices at the time of African Americans through that newspaper came through. So we were very proud of that because we had done this long before the current situation. And yet it was very, very useful in a very important moment. So we're going to continue to do that and look for new ways that we can also do more with digitization in that regard.
Thank you, Sandy, very much. And I want to thank Sandy Treadway and Mike Strom and others on the staff who have been working to make our resources especially widely known during these days. We are pleased to have 3 new board members appointed by Governor Northam. We have 2 of them today. We don't have Maya Castillo, but Leonard Tango and Laura Blevins are here. Laura and Leonard, might I ask you to say 30 seconds about yourselves and introduce yourselves to us? Laura, would you like to go first?
Once I figure out how to unmute myself. Let's see, what do I say about myself? I've wasn't born in Virginia, but born of Virginians, and I've spent most of my life here. Graduate of Virginia Highlands Community College, George Mason University, and Virginia Tech, and currently work as a regional director in Southwest Virginia for Senator Kane. And I think that's my 30 seconds.
Excellent. We are very happy to have you. Leonard, welcome.
Hi, thanks for doing this morning. About me, I'm a Virginia native. I was born in Norfolk, raised in Virginia Beach. I went to college at James Madison University, got a degree in political science and economics. I went to law school at Michigan State University, came back to Hampton Roads, where I was an assistant Commonwealth attorney in Portsmouth. I'm now living in Northern Virginia, but I refer to myself as a long Virginia Beach native down heart. I was elected to the school board, Virginia Beach School Board, where I served a 4-year term before moving to Northern Virginia, where I am now a real estate litigator, focusing my practice on real estate and title litigation.
Excellent.
Happy to be here.
Welcome. We're happy to have you. And I'll note that we've been joined by Robert Aguirre, who is a JMU professor, and he just gave you a thumbs up when you mentioned you are a JMU alum. So welcome. We're glad you're here.
Go Dukes, we say.
Yeah. And just a quick check, has Cham Light joined us? I don't see him. And okay, so I think he's the only one that we know of who was supposed to join us, but
I do see Sham.
is Cham on?
Yeah, he's muted.
Okay, I'm glad he's here. Excellent. So we have a full house except for Maya, and we do welcome Maya as well. We look forward to seeing her at the next meeting. First item on the agenda, and we're going to move through the agenda. As we explained, noted in the email, during this virtual meeting, we're only going to take up those items that are business items that we absolutely have to kind of do. So we're not going to, we're going to dispense with the extensive committee reports and all of those kinds of things. You've gotten some of that in your written materials, but we're going to try to move through this in pretty workmanlike fashion. But first item on the agenda, we have 5 action items beyond approval of the minutes and approval of the agenda and all of that kind of stuff. But the agenda has been publicly noticed and it is before you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
It's been moved by Paul Brockwell and seconded by Blythe.
Second.
All in favor of approving the agenda as publicly noticed, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. The agenda is approved. Second item is approval of the minutes from our January 6th, 2020 meeting. Those have been sent to you electronically and they've been publicly noticed as well. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
It's been moved by Blythe and seconded by Marcy Sims or Johnson. All in favor of the minutes, say aye. First, I should say, has anybody noticed any amendments to the minutes that you want to propose?
We abstain because I wasn't at the last meeting.
Yeah, Leonard and Laura can abstain on this since they were not part of that meeting, obviously. Hearing no amendments to the minutes, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of adopting the minutes as noted, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Aye.
Amendments are adopted or approved. So the Public Library Development Committee, Shelley is the chair of that committee. And so I will turn it over to Shelley and staff to note some business items that we likely need to act on. Shelley?
Thank you and good morning, everyone. We're presenting 2 action items for the board today. First, the approval of the state aid waiver request, and second, the approval of the fiscal year 2021 state aid allocations. So in your packet, you'll find the state aid requirements from the Virginia Administrative Code, and that's on page 13. As stated in the code, the board has the discretion to make exceptions to any single requirement. A public library must show a real effort and significant progress has been made to meet the requirement, such as increases in local funding, or that the requirement does not best serve a particular community, such as having specific evening hours. So the waivers have 2 categories. We have a technical, which are reasonable fluctuations that occur in their business. And then we have non-technical, which generally are decreases in local funding due to budget cuts. I'll now turn it over to Kim to walk through the technical waiver requests as presented on page 17 of your packet.
Thank you, Shelley. Before we go to Kim, Sandy, Kim, am I correct that we have numerous votes that we have to take, and some may be block and some may be individual?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So guide us as to what are block votes and what might be individual votes.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
We're first
Yeah.
going to cover the technical waivers, and after I've explained in general the technical waivers, this will require a block vote. So as Shelley explained, the technical waivers are decreases in expenditure from the previous year that occurred due to normal business fluctuations. And on page 17, I've broken those out into several categories. Primary one is usually personnel changes. This happens if someone retires or if a position is vacant for a period of time, or if someone is hired at a lower level than their predecessor. So those are reasonable reasons for the decreases. And we have several libraries that fall under the personnel changes. The second category is one-time expenditures, and we have 4 libraries that is affected by that. These happen if in the previous year a library expended more funds for one-time outputs, such as a large order of computers, or if there is an HVAC that needs to be replaced, things of that nature. So those are the one-time expenditures. Then unfortunately, we move into a category on reporting errors. Whether this is the public library or their locality, when they are reporting their financials to us, a mistake has been made. And so again, that is something that is reasonable, it's explained, and so we just lump that into the reporting errors category. We also have lower costs category, and 3 library systems were favorably impacted by that. Lower costs usually happen if utility costs go down, which is wonderful when it happens, or other such costs have gone down. And then finally, there is the other category for things that are, again, reasonable, decreases in expenditures, but don't fit into the major categories. So for instance, Buchanan had a bid process that extended past their fiscal year, and this was done by the county. They just couldn't get reasonable bids in time for the fiscal year. With Clifton Forge, their director has been experiencing ill health, and so a lot of expenditures could not be made in a timely manner. And then finally, Lunenburg, they had a relatively new director, and between the director and the board, they were very anxious to be fiscally responsible, but unfortunately did not understand the requirements that do require they expend their funds. So those are the various categories of what we call technical waivers.
Are there any questions? Well, Mr. Chairman, it's the recommendation of the staff to move the technical waivers that were being discussed and approved as a block.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Again, are there any questions on these whatsoever? Hearing none, is there a motion on the technical waivers that have been explained, and we will vote on all of these? They're on page 17 in a block.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved and seconded. Mark Miller moved, and let's just say that Shelley Murphy seconded. I heard a chorus of. Sensing no further discussion, all in favor of the.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Preston. This is Audrey. You all have to do a roll call vote due to the electronic meeting rules. So
okay,
you have to call on everyone and get an aye or a nay for the record. Apologies.
Okay, excellent. I've got the list in front of me, so I will go down the list. Johnson Bowles. Everyone unmute yourselves, and when when your name is called, say yes or no. Johnson Bowles. Johnson, you need to unmute yourself.
Stop there.
All right, we'll come back. Robert Aguirre.
Yes.
Laura Blevins.
Yes.
Paul Brockwell.
Yes.
Mark Embledge.
Yes.
Muhammad Islami.
Yes.
Cham Light.
Yes.
Barbara Vines Little.
Yes.
Mark Miller.
Yes.
Shelley Murphy.
Yes.
Blythe Scott.
Yes.
Marcy Sims.
Yes.
Leonard Tango.
Yes.
Johnson Bowles. Johnson, if you're there, you need to unmute yourself and say yes or no. Okay, I don't know if we still have Johnson. So this is Preston Bryant. I vote yes.
This is Nancy. Maya Castillo has joined us also.
Excellent, excellent. We're happy to have Maya here. Maya, is your vote a yes or no if you heard the discussion?
I did, thanks. It's a yes.
There you are. Yep. Thank you. And once again, Johnson Bowles, are you there? Okay. We'll check on Johnson to see if we can get her back. So the motion passes unanimously. So thank you, Audrey. Shelley Murphy, the floor is still yours.
Okay, well, thank you. That vote's now going to be recorded. So next we're going to turn to the non-technical waivers on page 31. These waivers that are listed must be voted on individually. So Kim's going to provide a summary overview of each of the waiver and provide staff's recommendation on each one.
Thank you, Shelley.
Yes.
The non-technical waivers are waivers that occur when there are decreases in expenditures, generally due to budget cuts. These require a little more scrutiny, and so we present these to you one by one for individual votes. The first one we're going to address is Smith County Public Library. The library saw a decrease of $40,000 between 2018 and 2019. This was a 5.7% reduction that was due to stated budget cuts. According to the published county budget, other county departments initially received increases at the beginning of fiscal year 2019, but these were later reduced. For 2020, the county's adopted budget showed level funding for the library. For 2021's proposed budget, we were told by the library director that the library had been entirely defunded, and conversely by the chair of the Board of Supervisors that they were fully intending to support funding of the library. In your packet, you do have a letter from the library director. I have since received a letter from the county. It was too late to include in your board packet. And I would like to read the letter from the Board of Supervisors chair, if I may, right now. Dear Ms. Armentrout, the Smith County Board of Supervisors fully intends to support funding for the library, and it was never the intention of the Budget Committee to not fund it. We were simply waiting on updated numbers from the library to understand their cash position. Unfortunately, we did not get those numbers before the public notice was sent out. We received the numbers we needed on June 11th, and we intend to allocate the funding appropriately at our next committee meeting. Had we received the information when the budget request was submitted in February, this would not have been an issue. It is my hope this will not happen in the future, and I am looking forward to building a stronger partnership with the library and having more open lines of communication. Should you have any questions or need additional information, please feel free to contact me. And that is signed Judy Wyant, Chair. Since the initial budget cut, there has been a large turnover of county officials. While relations between the library and the county remain of some concern, staff feels the current administration is more amenable to supporting the library, and therefore we recommend conditional approval of the waiver. This means that the library development staff would be monitoring the library's progress throughout the year and could make corrections in the state aid allocation if necessary. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair, one clarifying question. Is this work product coming via the committee or directly from staff to the board?
Staff.
The committee was not able to meet, Paul. This is coming from staff.
So no questions, anyone? If not, Mr. Chairman, it's the recommendation of the staff to move that this non-technical waiver that was discussed be approved.
Thank you. And this is a roll call vote as well. Is that correct, Audrey?
Yes, that is correct. Any vote that you take today has to be by roll call.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
I'm sorry, it's approved conditionally. That's what we're approving, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion on this? Do we have Johnson Bowles? Just emailed Johnson, but yes, you're back. Thank you. Good. Johnson's here. So is there a motion? Let's get a motion.
So move.
It's been moved by Marcy and
I second that.
seconded by
Mark
Mark. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll now do a roll call vote. Johnson Bowles, and everybody say yes or no. Johnson Bowles,
Yes.
Robert Aguirre,
Yes.
Laura Blevins,
Yes.
Paul Brockwell,
Yes.
Mark Emblidge,
Yes.
Muhammad Islami,
Yes.
Sham Light,
Yes.
Barbara Vines Little,
Yes.
Mark Miller,
Yes.
Shelley Murphy,
Yes.
Blythe Scott,
Yes.
Marcy Sims,
Yes.
Leonard Tango,
Yes.
Maya Castillo.
Yes.
It passes unanimously.
Thank you. That vote's going to now be recorded. Kim?
Thank you, Shelley. Next, we're going to move to Tazewell County. The public library had a decrease in expenditures due to budget cuts across all county departments. As the table on page 34 illustrates, the cut to the library was less significant than the cuts to other major departments. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the waiver. Are there any questions?
Hearing no questions, is there a motion on Tazewell County's waiver?
I move.
It's been moved by Laura Blevins and seconded by Paul Brockwell. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll now do a roll call vote. Johnson Bowles,
Yes.
Robert Aguirre,
Yes.
Laura Blevins,
Yes.
Paul Brockwell,
Yes.
Maya Castillo,
Yes.
Mark Embledge,
Yes.
Muhammad Islami,
Yes.
Pam Light,
Yes.
Barbara Vines Little,
Yes.
Mark Miller,
Yes.
Shelley Murphy,
Yes.
Blythe Scott,
Yes.
Marcy Sims,
Yes.
and Leonard Tango.
Yes.
That passes, chair votes aye. That passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The vote's now going to be recorded. Kim, on to the next one.
Thank you, Shelley. The next two waiver requests are for the certified library director requirement. Danville Public Library is requesting a waiver for that requirement. The new library director, Russell Carter, is currently enrolled at LSU and is on schedule to complete the program in the spring of 2023. Typically, the library board grants such waivers and reviews the progress the candidate is making the following year to determine if further waivers are warranted. Staff recommends approval of this waiver. Are there any questions?
I have a question, Kim.
Yes.
For clarification, especially for some new members, this certification is for becoming a certified library director or for getting their master's degree in library and information sciences?
It is for getting their master's degree if they don't have one. They're also required to go through a certification application process with the Library of Virginia.
Okay. And one other question, for this library system and the Jamison we'll be discussing next, do those library systems have master's degree holders in their system?
I do not believe so. I know for sure Jamison does not. It's a small public
Library, right? Danville's a little bigger. They may have someone that may have a master's degree, it just doesn't serve as director.
Possibly, yes.
Okay.
Russell was serving as interim director when the new director they had hired suddenly left. And so the city tapped him as the next director, made that official not too long ago.
Okay.
And so he is now enrolling as fast as he can.
Okay. Thank you.
Mark, this is Nan Carmack, and I just wanted to let you know that yes, there are two other master's degreed librarians at Danville. Their collections manager and their technology manager.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of going at. As long as there's others in the higher level of management that have that degree, then I have no problem with the director getting one. You're taking the waiver for that time period.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I have a question for Ms. Armentrout. How long would the waivers that we're voting on last? Would they last for the duration of them earning their degree, or would this be something we need to renew each year upon evaluation?
The library board should be reviewing annually to check progress. We have had candidates who successfully completed their program within 2 years. Unfortunately, we have had 1 or 2 candidates who their periods kept extending and extending. And so the board has unofficially set an annual review to make sure that they are making the progress they're supposed to be making.
Thank you.
No further questions, Mr. Chairman. It's the recommendation of the staff that we move on this non-technical waiver that was being discussed and approved.
And this is for the Danville Library.
Yes.
So is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved by Mark Miller, and is there a second?
Second, please.
Seconded by Marcy Sims. Sensing no further discussion, I'll call the roll. Johnson Bowles,
Yes.
Robert Aguirre,
Yes.
Laura Blevins,
Yes.
Paul Brockwell,
Yes.
Maya Castillo,
Yes.
Mark Embledge,
Yes.
Muhammad Asami,
Yes.
Sam Light,
Yes.
Barbara Vines Little,
Yes.
Mark Miller,
Yes.
Shelley Murphy,
Yes.
Blythe Scott,
Yes.
Marcy Sims,
Yes.
and Leonard Tengo.
Yes.
Excellent. Chair votes aye. So that also passes unanimously.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Murphy.
Yeah, Kim?
Okay, the second waiver request for the certified library director requirement is with the J. Robert Jamison Memorial Library. They have a new library director as well. Her name is Diana Harvey. She has been accepted to the University of South Carolina and is currently working towards registration for the summer session. Her anticipated graduation is spring of 2022. As before, the library board would be asked to review progress made at next year's June meeting. Staff recommends approval of this waiver. Are there any questions?
Hearing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Paul Brockwell and seconded by Mark Miller
Oh, Mark. Okay.
or Blythe Scott. Sensing no further discussion, I will call the roll. Johnson Bowles,
Yes.
Robert Aguirre,
Yes.
Laura Blevins,
Yes.
Paul Brockwell,
Yes.
Maya Castillo,
Yes.
Mark Embledge,
Yes.
Muhammad Asami,
Yes.
Sam Light,
Yes.
Barbara Vines Little,
Yes.
Mark Miller,
Yes.
Shelley Murphy,
Yes.
Blythe Scott,
Yes.
Marcy Sims,
Yes.
Leonard Tengo.
Yes.
Chair votes aye, passes unanimously. Ms. Murphy, have you another?
Oh, yes. Yeah, a few more things. Yeah, Kim, you want to go on to the hours after 5 waivers?
Okay. The next 2 waiver requests are from public libraries that are requesting a waiver for the 3 consecutive evening hours requirement. What this means is they have to be open at least 1 evening a week until 8 p.m. The Cumberland County Public Library has requested this waiver. And with many of the small rural libraries, there is a decrease in foot traffic later in the evenings. And these communities see more benefit in providing more days with evening hours, although at an earlier closing time. Cumberland has submitted statistics on page 35 to support their request. Staff recommends approval of this waiver. Are there any questions?
Hearing none, is there a motion?
I'm sorry. Yes.
I'm sorry.
What time do they close then?
They're still closing at 8 currently. They are requesting a closing time of 7 p.m. based on their foot traffic. As you can see, it drops from 7 to 8 quite dramatically.
Trout, would this waiver be an annual waiver, or are we comfortable with the data they provided making that a ongoing exception?
Traditionally, Paul, this has been a waiver that is extended indefinitely.
Well, excuse me, Mrs. Johnson, is this not due to perhaps COVID? And shouldn't they revisit it perhaps at next year?
The statistics they gathered were pre-COVID, and we have several libraries in the past that have already applied for this waiver. Again, it tends to be the small rural communities. There just aren't a lot of visits later in the evening to public libraries, but they do prefer the option to have more days open, at least until 6 or 7.
Right. Okay, thank you.
I move the approval of the Cumberland County hours after 5 waiver.
Been moved by Paul Brockwell. There a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mark Miller. Sensing no further discussion, I'll call the roll on the Cumberland County waiver. Johnson Bowles,
Yes.
Robert Aguirre,
Yes.
Laura Blevins,
Yes.
Paul Brockwell,
Yes.
Maya Castillo,
Yes.
Mark Embledge,
Yes.
Muhammad Islami,
Yes.
Sam Light,
Yes.
Barbara Vines Little,
Yes.
Mark Miller,
Yes.
Shelley Murphy,
Yes.
Blythe Scott,
Yes.
Marcy Sims,
Yes.
Leonard Tango.
Yes.
Chair votes aye. Passes unanimously. Ms. Murphy?
Yes, that vote will now be recorded. Kim, Northumberland, please.
Okay, a similar situation to Cumberland. They are requesting the waiver for the 3 consecutive evening hours requirement. Their documentation can be found on page 35. Staff recommends approval of this waiver. Are there any questions?
I do have a question, Mr. Chairman. Much like for Cumberland, is the request, it's just a general question, I guess, it doesn't affect my decision, but are they looking to distribute the hours otherwise throughout the rest of the week? In other words, like in Cumberland's case, they don't want to stay open until 8 because people don't come in, but by reducing it from 8 to 7, does that allow them to extend hours on other days when they otherwise weren't open until 7?
Kim?
Money that they would spend being open for programs or something that may better help their community.
So they want to be distributing the hours instead of later on one night to other hours. But instead of closing at 5 on Tuesday, they can now close it. They can now stay open until 6 on Tuesday and Wednesday instead of having to be open until 8 on Thursday.
That's correct.
Something like that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Any further questions? Is there a motion? Been moved by Paul Brockwell and seconded by Blythe Scott. Sensing no further discussion, I'll call the roll. Johnson Bowles,
Yes.
Robert Aguirre,
Yes.
Laura Blevins,
Yes.
Paul Brockwell,
Yes.
Maya Castillo,
Yes.
Mark Embledge,
Yes.
Muhammad Islami,
Yes.
Sam Light,
Yes.
Barbara Vines Little,
Yes.
Mark Miller,
Yes.
Shelley Murphy,
Yes.
Blythe Scott,
Yes.
Marcy Sims,
Yes.
Leonard Tango.
Yes.
Chair votes aye. Passes unanimously. Ms. Murphy?
Thank you. That vote's now recorded. Kim, delayed audit waiver?
Okay, this is the last non-technical waiver request. This comes from Petersburg. The Petersburg Public Library has been unable to provide their 2019 audit to the Library of Virginia as required due to delays with the city and the auditor. In March, Connie Warren and I met with the Deputy City Manager of Community Affairs, Darnetta Tyus, and Library Director Wayne Crocker to discuss the issues and plan steps forward. According to the document provided by Ms. Tyus on page 37, Petersburg now anticipates completion of the audit by June 30th, with submission to the Library of Virginia following approval by City Council. In light of the great strides Petersburg made in submitting their 2018 audit, and in view of the additional challenges presented by COVID-19, staff recommends, as in with Smith, a conditional approval of the waiver. As agreed in the March meeting, Petersburg is submitting a status report of their corrective action plan progress by July 2nd for the 2018 audit and quarterly reports thereafter until all the points have been addressed. If the 2019 audit also results in a need for a corrective action plan, staff would address any related progress reports at that time. Staff would monitor progress and make corrections in the state aid allocation if necessary. Are there any questions?
Excuse me, I have a question.
Lauren?
With the, they say June the 5th, on June the 5th, that this is, they're going to have this audit, excuse me, available by June the 30th. Have we had an update whether that's going to be possible given the pandemic?
I spoke to the library director last week and he indicated that it was still on target.
Thank you, Laura, for asking that question. That was also going to be my question. Any other questions on this?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So there are particular deadlines that you mentioned, I think one in early, end of June, one in early July. What are the consequences if they don't meet those deadlines?
The Library of Virginia withholds their state aid allocation until they can get their documentation in. So if we don't have the audit by June 30th, the first quarter allocation, which is supposed to be dispersed shortly after this meeting, would be withheld until the second quarter. And at that time, if we didn't have the documentation still, we would continue to withhold. We certainly expect them to get it in by then. The worst case scenario is if the audit does not show up within the fiscal year, by the fourth quarter, we are forced to reallocate a library's state aid and disperse it to the remaining public libraries.
Thank you.
Kim, say that last piece again on redistribution.
Yes, if we don't
what
have all of the documents in by the fourth quarter, we have to redistribute the state aid allocation of a public library to the remaining 94 or 93 library systems now.
Right, understood. Thank you. Any other questions on the City of Petersburg's item? Hearing none, is there a motion?
So move.
It's been moved by Marcy and seconded, I think that was Marcy.
Yes. Yes, it was.
Seconded by Laura Blevins. Sensing no further discussion, I'll call the roll. Johnson Bowles,
Yes.
Robert Aguirre,
Yes.
Laura Blevins,
Yes.
Paul Brockwell,
Yes.
Maya Castillo,
Yes.
Mark Embledge,
Yes.
Yes.
Sham Light,
Yes.
Barbara Little,
Yes.
Mark Miller,
Yes.
Shelley Murphy,
Yes.
Blythe Scott,
Yes.
Marcy Sims,
Yes.
Leonard Tango.
Yes.
Chair votes aye, passes unanimously. Ms. Murphy?
Yes. Kim, you want to briefly explain pages 19 through 29 before we go to the last item?
Page 19. Hang on, let me get my packet.
We're getting a
Yes,
little.
okay. In your packet, you have several pages beginning with 19 that talk about a couple of requirements that are currently being monitored. However, they do not require any action from the board right now. The first one is the failure to meet 50% of the median local expenditure per capita. This requirement requires that we follow libraries that are not being as well supported by their localities. If they remain on the list for at least 3 consecutive years, the Library of Virginia requires that that library system submit a 5-year plan to us stating how they intend to increase their local funding. And so on the list, you'll see on page 19, this is a trend spreadsheet, which shows over the years which libraries have been on. Many of them are already in the plan, such as Massanutten, Heritage, Jamison. And then the following pages is the spreadsheet, which shows us the per capita breakdown of the median expenditures. And the ones highlighted in yellow are the ones that are below the 50% of the median, and those are the ones we track. Unfortunately, most of the ones always at the bottom are from our nonprofit libraries. The local officials tend to view them as external agencies and just don't feel the investment in funding as we would hope. Moving on to page 25, there's also the failure to meet the 2/3 requirement from taxation or endowment. And again, we track that trend over years. We did make a change in 2019. We took a look at the requirement and realized that we could more accurately reflect the language in the requirements. So we changed the total local government income to total local government expenditures, and the total income was changed to total local income. We just felt that the requirement language was not jiving with what we were calculating, and so this brings it in line with the language. The pages after that are the spreadsheet that again break this down by percentage. And the ones highlighted in yellow are the libraries that are below that 2/3 requirement. And so going forward, we will be tracking them. And if there are consecutive years where they are in this position, they will be required to submit a 5-year plan to the Library of Virginia. Are there any questions?
Ms. Murphy, this is an informational only item, right?
Yes, no action needs to be taken.
Thank you. Ms. Bowles?
Yes, Kim, are there any programs or workshops for library directors to get together and really talk about strategies that have been successful to have localities be more supportive of libraries? I mean, it seems to me when I was looking at the data is that oftentimes it's the rural and poorer parts of Virginia, and that concerns me, of course, that there's probably the ones that need it the most. So does the library have opportunities for library directors to get together and have maybe a forum or a panel discussion about successful persuasive tactics?
They do, Johnson. Thanks for asking that. The library directors across the state tend to meet in regional groups. And so that is the first line of defense. When they are able to get together quarterly, monthly, however often they meet, because when they are in the meeting, they tend to generate excellent ideas, and they are wonderful about sharing. So that's usually the first thing that helps generate not only ideas for an individual library, but just a sharing across the board of resources and partnerships. The Library of Virginia also provides online and sometimes in person various seminars and workshops that address a wide range of topics. And often those topics will cover things like generating more local income, getting more investment in your local government, topics such as those. So they do have access to them. We're always encouraging them to take advantage of those. And if we hear a groundswell of something that isn't currently on offer, we go out and find it and provide it to them.
Hi, this is Nan Carmack. Of additional note, I'm working with the Governmental Relations Director at the Virginia Association of Counties to write an article or perhaps a blog post for their publication regarding the value of libraries and communities towards economic development and community well-being. And we're also discussing a potential conference session for the VACO conference, which has now been just sort of upended with the pandemic. So I'm not sure what will happen, but we are working along some avenues to start having that conversation directly with county administrators and their elected officials through VACO. One that's kind of a test drive. And if that's successful, we will try to do the same with the Virginia Municipal League to start going straight to the source.
That's great. Thank you so much. I just I feel very strongly about figuring out how we can help these libraries that are overtaxed anyhow, and helping them and helping their communities advocate for support. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Miller.
I just want to add briefly to Johnson's comments that this problem is endemic throughout the country. At the American Library Association conferences and the Public Library Association conferences I attend, you see this throughout the country, that the quote unquote big city library systems, they recognize that even their more rural counterparts are struggling greatly. And this is an item I've always hoped that that our committee could take up to try and figure out how Virginia can sort of show how to lead the way. And part of that is one of the challenges with state aid, as Kim mentioned. If one particular county never qualifies for a system and we have to redistribute their $65,000, it gets redistributed to all the other 94 library systems in its normal proportion. That's state code. We have to work to change that to say, you know what, does Virginia Beach and Loudoun and Fairfax need the extra $297? You know, would it be better spent by directing it to a system that could otherwise make value of that money? And those are things that I would hope that in the future the committee could explore.
Yes, I agree, but I'd also want to make sure that we keep localities, you know, and their governments accountable to supporting the citizens and educational needs. So, you know, we can have, hopefully we'll have more conversations about this and how even the education and outreach committee might be able to support this committee's work in that regard now more than ever. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Bowles. Any further discussion on this item, which was an informational item?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is Cham Light.
Sure.
I'm sorry I'm not on visual. Something's going on with my my laptop screen. But anyway, you know, this was probably the most waivers I ever remember since I've been on the board. The local waivers that we went through today, and one, I hope it's not a troubling trend. I hope that we'll be back more to the typical 2 or 3 waivers that we typically deal with. But I'd also just like to commend Kim Armentrout and Shelley Murphy, because I know this was a lot to try to keep straight and to get through in a understandable fashion. And thank you, Kim and Shelley, for navigating us through this today.
Appreciate it. We want to include Nan in there. I needed the help.
And Nan
It was
is
a lot. So,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman,
Yes,
fine. We're ready to move on to the next one.
yes, ma'am.
The last one? Okay.
ma'am.
So finally, the current state aid estimate for fiscal year 2021 can be found on pages 39 through 41 in your packet. So we respectively request approval of the presented allocations in total in order to begin dispersal of funds for July.
So this is agenda item number 4B on your agenda that we've
Yes,
moved to.
I'm sorry. Yes,
I just wanted to keep us up to date on where we are on the agenda.
yes. And pages 39 through 41.
Right. Are there any questions or discussion on this? Mr. Brockwell?
For the benefit of our newer members, it may be to briefly explain how state aid works, where that funding's coming from, whether or not it would actually be affected by some of the uncertainty we know is coming in the state budget, just before I guess we vote, because I don't think there's a lot to discuss, but that might be helpful for our three newbies.
Sure, I'll let Kim take that. And also remember in your packet, you do have a copy of the code that's in there that does show some of the requirements. So Kim?
Thanks, Shelley. The state aid allocation is generated by the General Assembly. They met, of course, from January to right before COVID hit, and originally approved a $1.5 million increase. The 1 million was to go to all public libraries, and then the 500,000 was designated for the Eastern Shore Public Library as a special appropriation. Once the pandemic hit and the General Assembly reviewed the state aid, they opted with a lot of other expenditures to freeze most of the allocation. So 1 million of the allocation that was originally designated is frozen. We are hoping that at some point during the year it is unfrozen and we can designate that or reallocate that to the libraries. But currently the state aid estimate that you are looking at only contains the 500,000 that was originally designated for Eastern Shore. The Department of Planning and Budget has put that back into the general state aid budget, and so that is being dispersed to public libraries. So that's the short history of the state aid allocation for our public libraries, at least this year.
And can I just add, the allocations are driven by a formula, and the formula actually allows for substantially more funding to go to state aid. So this is funded, Kim, I'm not sure, is it about 60% of what the formula would allow?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's lots of room for the General Assembly to add additional funding. And this is the top priority for the public library community, to get state aid fully funded by the General Assembly. But we can only work with what the appropriation is.
Can I ask a question?
Please, Laura.
For those libraries that are seeing a reduction, is it just based on a mathematical formula?
It is. Part of the formula is population, it is square miles, and it is also local expenditures. To be precise, it is 40% of local expenditures. So when local expenditures go down for whatever reason, that 40% also goes down. And so it's just a function of the formula, not that they are being penalized in any way.
And this is Preston, just to be clear, is this formula set in code or regulation or policy or what?
Yes, it is. It is in the code.
Code. Any further discussion or questions? Question before us is approval of this aid distribution. Is there a motion? Or Paul, did you have a question?
I was just gonna say, I move the approval of the state aid allotments.
Paul has approved, and is there a second?
A second.
Mark Miller seconds. Sensing no further discussion, I will call the roll on this. And I apologize for all these individual roll calls, but it's necessary. Johnson Bowles.
Yes.
Robert Aguirre.
Yes.
Laura Blevins.
Yes.
Paul Brockwell.
Yes.
Maya Castillo. Maya had stepped away for a moment. I got a note on. Mark Embledge.
Yes.
Ahmed Islami.
Yes.
Sam Light.
Yes.
Barbara Fines.
Yes.
Mark
Yes.
Mark Miller.
Yes.
Shelley Murphy.
Yes.
Blythe Scott.
Aye.
Marcy Sims.
Yes.
Leonard Tango.
Yes.
Is Maya Castillo back? No vote from Maya. Chair votes aye, so it passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, that's all from the Public Library Development Committee.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. That was a lot of work and a lot of votes. So thank you and Kim and Nan and others for your work. Moving on to item number 5, which is information items. Sandy, you want to say a word about just the state of our budget, as in, I'll just leave it at that, state of our budget. You need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, yes, Connie Warren is not feeling well today and asked me just quickly to go over this. The best news that I have is that we are closing the year out, absolutely no issues or problems. And, officially that's done next week, but we're pretty much wrapped everything up. So everything has balanced out. If you look at the material in your packet, you do notice that in terms of federal funds, that's as of the end of April.
We're on page 43 through 45.
Yes. That we still had some, we were underspent in terms of federal funds and also Circuit Court Records Program funds, which at the end of April were only 52%. In terms of the Circuit Court Records, we actually had some staff retirements, and it took a while, particularly once COVID came about, to replace those positions. So that's some salary money there. And also the program had set aside a bit of money to address some diseased microfilm, and that we'd have to spend to have that reformatted. And that project has not been able to happen because of COVID. So the money will be spent. It's just right at this point in the year, for those reasons, it hadn't been. And in terms of
Sandy,
yeah,
before you go to the year comparisons, for our new members, will you say just a very brief word about general funds, federal, special, and the circuit court fund?
Yes, the general fund line item is the money that's appropriated to the library by the General Assembly. So those are all state funds that we're required to spend by the end of each fiscal year. The federal funds that we receive, the largest amount comes from the Institute of Museums and Library Services. State libraries across the country receive an appropriation from the federal government to support statewide library services. The program is called the Library Services and Technology Act, LSTA. And so you will be hearing more about how we do that probably at the September meeting, because that's when we set the budget for those federal funds for the coming year. But it goes to pay for our online databases, for our library development services and consulting services, and a wide variety of other things. The special funds category is money that we bring in and earn. So it includes, fines that people pay on overdue books. It included last year, for example, quite a bit of money coming in from the Commemoration 2019 project, where they were supporting things here. And that money, we do have the ability to carry that money over from year to year. And then the Circuit Court Record, or CCRP funds, that is money that comes to us currently from $1.50 that is in the long list of fees when you buy or sell a house or you record a deed. There's a large number of fees that you pay. Well, currently $1.50 of that comes to the library, and it is restricted for use in preserving historic court records. And we work with the circuit court clerks across the state to do that. In the new budget, that number has gone up, which is exciting. So we will be receiving $3.50 per every recordation, and that will give that program a tremendous boost. So those are the main sources of our funding. And in terms of the comparative statement, probably the biggest thing to point out there is that the budget is down by $130,000 from year to year, and that is directly related to the 2019 commemoration money that came in last year that we don't have this year. So everything else is, in terms of spending, particularly the federal funds, is more of a timing of when those projects hit and are paid for. So there are no concerns there. However, the one thing I will add that's important for you to know is when I say we've spent out our state funds and everything balanced out, that is true, but we actually spent less than we had hoped to by about $550,000. And that's because state agencies were asked by the governor's office to identify funds that could in effect be put back into the general fund that we committed to not spending this fiscal year and put back into the general fund to help the state deal with the economic crash that occurred with COVID-19. So we did, most of it comes from administrative and support services, a lot of that from technology things that we could defer. And we did put back on the table $550,000. What we don't know, and we probably won't know until later in the summer, is that a permanent reduction? Is it a one-time thing? Is it a permanent reduction and that will be removed? Or if we are given budget reductions for FY21, will this be credited against those? We've received no guidance on that whatsoever. So, you know, that, as you can imagine, that was difficult for us. We've deferred or postponed several projects that we had hoped to do this year, but our budget situation is really in limbo until the General Assembly meets and decides what it's going to do. We know that all new monies that we received in the budget have been frozen or unallotted, but we don't know what cuts will be coming beyond that. Would you like me to move into the next information item? Or?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay. Just wanted to give you an update on how we've responded to COVID-19 and especially what our plan is for the coming weeks. As most of you know, we closed on directive from the governor in mid-March. And at the time, we thought 2 weeks, so we were given authority to close till the end of March. Then it became clear this was going longer, so we went to the end of April. And at that point, when we got into May, it was till further notice because we really had no idea how this was going to play out. However, once we got into mid-May and the governor started talking about being able to do to reopen parts of Virginia and its public spaces, we began planning in earnest for reopening, even though we knew we did not have a target date at that point. State agencies have been given tremendous amount of guidance about how they are to develop a reopening plan. And we have a lot of protocols and requirements that we have to comply with in order to do it. I do want to emphasize that while we were close to the public, the library staff was working. Most, about 80%, could telework. The remaining folks were coming into the building, and I did that as well, just to make sure there was somebody here who could make a decision quickly if it needed to happen. Because some folks, their jobs just don't lend themselves to teleworking. But we were able to catch up on a whole lot of collection maintenance and other projects that we've never had the time to do, which is great. And our reference and archival staff have really gone above and beyond to fulfill email, phone requests, and have assisted not only citizens, but the governor's office and others with research. I mean, we can't do in-depth, days-long research, but if somebody is asking for something that we can find, scan, and email to them, we're doing it. And I've received many letters from citizens thanking us for that, really have taken the time to say it meant a great deal. But of course, it's not the same as actually being here to do research. So we quickly as we got into early May, we assessed what we would need to put in place in order to safely open to the public. The only problem is every other organization in the world needs the same stuff to do that. So we have been competing for masks and gloves and sanitary wipes, which have been at a premium, hand sanitizer, all of these things. We've also, we couldn't find commercially what was going to work for our configuration. So we purchased plexiglass and hired a contractor to actually build plexiglass shields on all of our customer service circulation desks, lobby desks, so that as we interact with the public is safer and we are protected as well. We have gotten all of that pretty much in place, and we're just waiting for the last few supplies. But it is looking like, and we hope to make an announcement next week, that we will be able to reopen to the public right after the July 4th holiday. Now, the reopening is going to bring a lot of changes. So our staff, public service staff, is actually in here this week, and they are doing training so that they understand all the new protocols. So we absolutely have to comply with the governor's ruling that anyone who comes into the building must wear a face covering, and we will supply them if people do not have them. We will make an exception if a member of the public has a medical situation that they can't do that, but otherwise it is expected. We will have a table in the lobby, and we'll actually be greeting visitors as they come in. And we're asking people who wish to use the collections on the second floor for the summer at least, till we can reassess, to do it by appointment. In order to social distance in the archives research room, the microfilm area, the local history room, that's going to limit your capacity. And so if someone comes in and they want to use something, we want them to have the assurance there will be a place for them. So we will be strongly encouraging people to make appointments so that they are guaranteed they can use what they need in the area they need to use it. If someone walks in, doesn't have an appointment, and we're not full that day, we will accommodate it. But we want to be sure that researchers who've been waiting for months can be assured that when they come, they will have that. Because we have several vacancies in our public service staff, and there is a hiring freeze in state government right now, and we can't fill them. We have a few staff with maybe an underlying medical condition, so their time on the floor is more limited than it might ordinarily be. And because we have no idea what we're looking at in August when the budget is finalized, we have decided to open on a more limited schedule for the summer, and then assuming all of this falls into place and the worst doesn't happen, we can then look at expanding that schedule. But rather than open back to normal and not be able to hold that, we thought it would be better to start smaller. So I know this will be disappointing to folks, but we're going to start with Tuesday through Friday from 10 to 4. On Mondays, the public service staff will be continuing to fulfill email and reference requests, anything they can do to reduce the need for someone to come to the library. And then once the budget is passed, and we have no idea if we'll be furloughing staff, if we will be having to make serious cuts, then we will know and we'll be able to assess what our schedule can be going forward. But at least we will be able to accommodate probably about 30 people maximum on the second floor, which should be fine for the summer months. We are eliminating all fines because we don't want people handling cash. So anyone who brings back a book, even if they checked it out in January, it's fine. And just as a precaution, we are taking books that are returned and we are quarantining them for 3 days. There's a lot of research that's now been done that says after 3 days, this virus does not survive on a hardback book or even on the pages inside it. So that's just an extra precaution I know we'll be doing for the foreseeable future. I really want to commend the Secretary of Education's office and the governor's office for communicating regularly, both in general with state agencies, but they made a special point with the cultural agencies to share information and provide us guidance and advice. They don't need to approve our reopening plan, but they've asked us to share it with them. And they understand that each of us are different, so we're going to be opening on different schedules. They also reminded us that just because the governor's phasing allows something to happen, doesn't mean you have to do it. So if anyone ever asks you, well, the governor's in phase 2 and the library's not opening till phase 3, why is that? It's because that's what we need to do in order to do it right. The last thing we want is for a staff member or a member of the public to come in and contract this virus because we haven't taken these protocols, and then we have to shut the whole building down. So we're really doing our best to avoid that. And I want to thank the facilities staff too here at the library who have stepped up, and they have been, the whole time we've been closed to the public, they've been here every night. They're cleaning, sanitizing, making sure that the building was kept in tip-top shape. So, and we have protocols in place for the restrooms, for keyboards in the reading rooms. Every time somebody gets up from a microfilm computer, those will be wiped down and cleaned, and the facility staff has just been great. And I also want to commend the management team and the staff who have been working both from home and from here. This was not easy, and they have adapted brilliantly, I think, to the circumstances. We can't do everything, but they have done their best. And anytime I've had to ask someone, particularly in the archives or the research, for special help because somebody in government needed information, or we had a citizen that had a special request, nobody's blinked twice. They've been right there, said yes, and made it happen. So I think you can be very proud of what the staff here has done. And I know there's some nervousness about reopening to the public, but folks are being very practical, very responsible, and I think they'll be very glad to see people and welcome them back to the library. So you may be looking at them through a few layers of cloth and a plexiglass shield, but I think Shelley and Barbara, when you come back, particularly, I know you'll be glad to see folks, and I know our staff will be as well. So we plan to announce sometime next week, once we're absolutely sure everything's in place to reopen the next week. We will give a heads up to the governor first, and then you will be the next to know when we are planning to reopen and have all the information. Our staff will know, and then we have a communications plan, and we will be sharing that through the press, through our website, through our social media, through our the affiliated groups like the Genealogy Society, the Friends of the Archives, the Virginia Library Association will be sharing all of that to get that information widely out there. And we look forward to that. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about what we're doing.
Yes, I have been party to a number of questions myself from people asking if I knew what was going on. And the original announcement that came out, which mentioned the fact that people would have to have appointments. One of the questions that was raised, well, but I want to come and stay all day. Is that possible? Or are these going to be limited to 1 or 2 hours? Because a lot of people, especially those, that come from a distance like I do, can't afford to drive in for an hour or two.
Right. For what we're calling, I think Greg has called it general research, which would mean using the second floor, the local history room, the microfilm, the research materials on the shelves. Yes, it's an all day appointment. The only one that is timed would be the archives research room, because for social distancing, That to really be able to do it is a maximum of 4 people in addition to the staff that could be in there.
That's what I thought.
And they will be making an appointment for the morning. And then we're going to close for lunch so the staff can get lunch and so we can clean that room and all the surfaces in the room. And then they'll have an afternoon slot. And it will be possible to make an appointment for both the morning and the afternoon if somebody's coming in from a distance. So, they would need to make one for if they're going to be using microfilm for the general research, and then make a specific one for archives research as well.
Okay.
Now, I will say if somebody walks in and they didn't know or didn't make an appointment and we're not full, we'll make one for them right on the spot. So it's just if you want to absolutely be sure.
If I'm driving 3 hours total, I want to be sure. And I think that is very good. The second question people had was why Tuesday through Friday instead of maybe Wednesday through Saturday, so that people who actually are able to work now could come in.
Well, and that's where we'll be looking to see how this works. And if we're able to extend, that would be what we would do. We would go to the Saturday, not the Monday. So yeah, we're looking at this as an interim to see how it works. You know, if everything goes smoothly and we don't need, for example, that desk in the lobby where we're greeting people and familiarizing them with things, and we can assign that staff back upstairs, it may be possible to do. So we are well aware that Saturdays are important. Saturdays in the summer are usually less busy than during the year. So that's why we hope to resolve this by the end of the summer period.
Yes, that would be true. I think those summer activities are changing radically this year.
Well, that could
be. The other question, somebody said, well, can we check out books? Because that wasn't addressed.
Yes, we will. We did discuss it. And yes, you may check out books. Until we learn more, and there's a lot of research in the library and the archival field being done right now. So we may learn more, but right now, if those books come back, as I said, we are going to quarantine them for a few days. We have discussed, people come in, particularly in the local history room, they're pulling books off the shelf, and they may put them on a cart for the staff to reshelve, or they may put them back. They are also using microfilm and putting that film right back for somebody else to use. So we talked about, do we have to quarantine that? Like somebody uses a reel of microfilm and for 3 days, no one else can use it. And we have come down, and we will be watching this closely, that no, that anyone who comes in to do research now does know the situation in the world. They presumably are taking safety precautions, but they are comfortable enough coming in the way that you do in the grocery store. So I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll take something off the shelf in the grocery store, decide, no, I don't want that. I want the other side. So I put it back. When the next person comes along, they don't know that I've touched that. And the same would be with these books. So we are encouraging patrons. Everything that I've read is even if you were to touch something that had the virus, if you do not touch your face and you wash your hands right away or as soon as possible, use hand sanitizer, your chance of contracting anything are very low. So
let me interrupt for a second. Maya Castillo was trying to she's in the waiting room and trying to get let back in.
I'm back.
Oh, you are back. I'm sorry. I was trying to determine if you were back. I was sorry to interrupt. I didn't want you to not hear discussion.
No, I think that is very true right now, that most people are aware, if you follow normal precautions, that the chances of contracting the virus from a book or a microfilm, or actually even from a keyboard, are very slim to none. But I think that those are the things. And I will also say that as you have heard innumerable times, so have I, that people in the community have been very appreciative of the responses that they have received from staff in answer to questions, requests for materials, that sort of thing. And so it's been a very positive experience from that point of view.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And you know, that's been, I think, the hardest thing for our staff, because that's why they're here. That's why they're in this, is because they want to connect people with the information that they need. And so not being able to do it fully, but do it as best that they can, they've really been trying.
I had a couple of experiences where they went way beyond what one would normally expect in looking for answers to rather odd questions. So,
well, thank you for sharing that. And Greg, I hope you will share that. I see you're on there with your staff, because I think that's that would mean a great deal to them.
I definitely will. One other, just another detail, Barbara, we are going to have a dedicated phone line for appointments as well. So that'll come out in the information. And another really important part of deciding to have somebody in the lobby is just to brief them on, you know, the changed policies and procedures. Just make sure they're comfortable when they come in. So yeah, I think we're in good shape. We've had a good round of training this week, and we look forward to having people back in the building.
well, I know there are a lot of people that are looking forward to being able to get back.
We know too. They've called us.
All right, thank you for that, Sandy. And just so everyone knows, Sandy and I talk at least once a week, sometimes several times a week, and email communication frequently through all of these operational upsets. And like you, my kudos to Sandy and the entire staff on how they've been handling this and the plans they've made. And they have stayed in frequent contact with DGS and the Secretary's office as well. So it's all been a very coordinated effort. So excellent, excellent work. Sensing no further discussions on this, Sandy, does that complete?
That does, yes.
Here on operations, excellent. Moving on, the next item is an important one, especially, and that is this is the report of the Executive Committee. And for just to be clear, the Executive Committee consists of me as chair, Johnson Bowles as vice chair, and then Mark Embledge, Blythe Scott, and Sham Light. And the only matter before the Executive Committee has been the extension of Sandy Treadway, Librarian of Virginia, extending her contract. Background, Sandy has been operating under a 3-year contract, July 1, 2017 to June 30, 2020, which expires in 4 days. The terms of that contract allow for 2 one-year additions, and each of those 1 year's additions have to be considered, discussed, and voted on separately in the year. So we only have 1 year extension before us right now. And that 1 year extension would be July 1, 2020, starting in about a week, and extending to July 30, 2021. If that is acted upon, then we would consider the second 1 year extension next June, presumably next June or thereabouts. So Sandy desires to stay on for 1 more year. So therefore, we have to consider an amendment to her contract. I have worked, and the Executive Committee has been privy to all the documents. I've worked with Audrey Burgess, our counsel at the AG's office, and she has drafted an addendum to Sandy's contract. And I won't read the addendum, but I'll let you know that it changes the term from it specifies July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021. It notes that her base salary is set by the state budget and what is appropriated therein. It notes that there is no salary supplement for this next year. It notes that all other terms and conditions in the underlying contract remain the same, and that the contract and this addendum represents the entirety of what's before us and the governing documents. There are no documents or papers before us, and that represents her employment agreement. The Executive Committee has considered this, and before I call on anyone from the executive committee, if they have any extra comments, I'll say that the recommendation of the executive committee is unanimous that we extend the contract to the 1 year that is allowed for us. I'll say that we have the opportunity to go into executive session if anyone feels that is necessary. That would require us leaving this platform and going to another platform or calling in or something. Audrey could advise us. So before I open it up to any executive committee members first and then any board members, let me ask Audrey, is everything I stated correct, Audrey? And do you have any additional comments as counsel?
Everything that you stated is correct. And the only additional comment I would have is that the way that the contract is drafted does require you to take this step annually. So you can't vote, unfortunately, for a 2-year extension at this time. You would have to actually, as part of your evaluation process next year, do this again. And it would read substantially the same.
Yep. So we only have the 1 year of the 2 years before us right now. And where this is leading to is I have a resolution that I will read to you that we will have to act on. But with that, let me first ask if anyone on the executive committee, Johnson, Mark, Blythe, or Champ, have any additional comments, and then we'll open it up. Hearing none, does anyone on the board have any additional comments or questions about what's before us? Mark, I see
Mr.
your
Chairman, so I'm happy to support whichever direction Sandy wants to go. Was consideration given by the executive committee or Sandy to just create a new 3-year contract? Or was this extension something that either executive committee or Sandy? I'm just curious how that happened.
We're governed by the contract that's before us. The contract lays out the initial 3-year term, and then the contract currently specifies that we then have the option of 2 1-year additions voted on separately. So we're being governed by the contract that is before us.
I guess the question is, so declining the option and entering into a new contract is not something that's allowed?
I would turn that question to counsel. Audrey, do you want to speak to that?
It certainly, I guess, would be allowed. It would require an entirely new negotiation. My understanding is that the two parties to the contract, the board's executive committee and the librarian, wish to just extend the current contract on its current terms. And that's how it was originally written. The original contract was written with that intent in mind.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Brockwell, you had a question?
Looking at the calendar, it looks like that was a very smart move on behalf of the executive committee. And I wanted to say I trust your judgment. I'm very thankful for Sandy's leadership and her willingness to continue, especially at this particularly challenging time, to provide leadership for the library and all that it's doing.
Any further comments? And again, if anyone feels the need to go into executive session, please speak up. We have that option. I'm not sensing it. Any additional questions? Sensing none, I will read the resolution that we will then have to vote on, and this will be a roll call vote. The resolution, extension of Librarian of Virginia Executive Employment Agreement dated, Audrey, I guess we'll have to date this June 26, 2020. Then it's simply a one sentence. Resolved by the Board of Trustees of the Library of Virginia, the Executive Employment Agreement of the Librarian of Virginia shall be extended for a 1-year period commencing July 1, 2020 and terminating July 30, 2021, period. That's the entirety of the resolution. Is there any discussion on the resolution?
Mr. Chairman, I think you said terminating July the 30th
I'm sorry,
of 2021.
July
I think it
1,
should be
20,
June.
Yeah, I misread. Commencing July 1, 2020 and terminating June 30, 2021, period. If anyone needs me to read that again, please. July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021. Is there a motion on the resolution?
I'll move, Mr. Chairman.
Everybody has moved. Mark Miller moves, and let's say Blythe Scott has seconded. And any further discussion? Sensing none, all in, that's right, I got to call the roll. Johnson Bowles. Everyone can unmute yourselves. Johnson, are you still on?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, there you are.
Yes.
Johnson Bowles votes yes. Robert Aguirre?
Aye.
Laura Blevins?
Aye.
Paul Brockwell?
Proudly vote aye.
Maya Castillo?
Yes.
Mark Embledge?
Aye.
Mohammed Islami?
Yes.
Pam Light?
Aye.
Barbara Vines Little?
Yes.
Mark Miller?
Aye.
Shelley Murphy?
Yes.
Blythe Scott?
Yes.
Marcy Sims?
Aye.
Leonard Tango?
Yes.
Chair happily votes aye. It's unanimous. Sandy, you are stuck with this bunch for another year.
It's a privilege.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much for your leadership, and we look forward to another 12 months of working with you. Very much. The next item, moving along, I realize our time is clicking here. Report of the nominating committee. And the nominating committee really consists of me, Mark Embledge, and Blythe Scott. We had two others, but their terms expired, Kristen Cabral and David Skyle. So the matter before us will be electing officers. I would like to turn it over to Mark and or Blythe.
Maybe I'll take the lead and then Blythe can chime in if I leave anything out. The library board only has two officers that we have to elect. And this is the two officers are the chair and the vice chair. And we usually every year have the vice chair move up and the chair, go on as past chair. Because of the situation that we're in right now, and because of providing some continuity during these times, the nominating committee is putting before you our suggestion that we hold on to the current chair and vice chair and let them serve another term. We've done something similar to this in the past. I remember, Sandy, that I stepped in as vice chair after a chair had served only a couple of months and resigned from the board. And I actually served what almost was 2 years. So it's I think there's precedence for this. But I think that what I've come to see as a board member is that Preston lives here in Richmond. Preston is constantly in touch with Sandy during these times. We're fortunate to have Johnson and her strong background in libraries. And so that is the recommendation of the committee that we would go ahead and elect Preston for another term as chair and Johnson as another term for vice chair.
Blythe Scott, did you have any additional?
I just wanted to chime in and say Mark summed it up just perfectly. I think Preston and Johnson are in a good position to continue the leadership since Sandy has been extended her 1-year contract. It makes sense.
Additional comment from board members or discussion?
I think that's a wise approach. This is Cham Light. I think it's a very wise approach, especially given the environment in which we're currently working. And I think procedurally, the recommendation is made today and then it's voted on in September, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Actually, normally it happens in April and is then voted on in June.
Okay.
Since we didn't have the April meeting, we would need to do it, although you're continuing this, if you vote to approve it, you're continuing the same officers. So,
yeah.
Yeah, we'd have to do it technically now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I don't have any problem with that. I know in the past, as I said, there's always been that that delay, but I feel very comfortable, at least from my perspective, of voting on it today.
Mr. Chair, am I correct in that coming from a committee, this motion would need no second from the group?
I think that may be correct.
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion? Sensing none, I will call the roll. Johnson Bowles,
Aye.
Robert Aguirre,
Aye.
Laura Blevins,
Aye.
Paul Brockwell,
Aye.
Maya Castillo,
Aye.
Mark Embledge,
Aye.
Muhammad Islami,
Yes.
Pam Light,
Yes.
Barbara Vines Little,
Yes.
Mark Miller,
Yes.
Shelley Murphy,
Yes.
Blythe Scott,
Aye.
Marcy Sims,
Aye.
Leonard Tango,
Yes.
and the chair humbly votes aye. Motion passes, and thank you. And Johnson says thank you also.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. And, we will continue working very closely with Sandy and the team and reporting to you along the way. So the next item of business is report of the chair. You have before you the meeting dates. So for the 2021 calendar year. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 meetings over the course of the year. September 14, 2020, November 19, 2020, January 11, 2021, April 12, 2021, and June 28, 2021. Note that the November meeting is a joint extended board meeting with the foundation board, as we always do. And the June meeting of next year will count as our annual meeting. Is sensing that these dates are okay with everyone and you can go ahead and put them on your calendars. We do have to adopt these dates in this meeting schedule for the next year. Marcy?
Are the times going to be the same as in past years with the committees meeting earlier? And
Yes, typically we gather at approximately 8 o'clock for fellowship and coffee, and then have committee meeting, and the board meeting typically starts at about 10 a.m. and we're usually done around noon with a lunch. So that will be the rough schedule. So for new board members and old, roughly we're looking at 8 a.m. give or take to all inclusive, maybe 1 o'clock, 1:30 if you're you get one is that's the typical schedule.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Typically, the June meeting has tended to be more towards the middle of the month as opposed to the very end of the month. Does that should circumstances such as this befall us, and the meeting has to be moved, they would push it into the next fiscal year? Was there any consideration given to that?
We could always move
You have to move it to early June because there are some board members that don't like it to happen the day after Father's Day because it would require them to come in and stay overnight on Father's Day, and that's why we pushed it back. But we could go earlier if there's that desire.
That works.
But of course, we can always call a special meeting if we find a date needs to be changed or the executive committee can act, I think. But we would do that with foreknowledge and as much advance notice as possible. Any discussion on the calendar? Is there a motion on the calendar?
I'll move the calendar to be adopted as it's been drafted. This is Chan Light.
Mr. Light moves and Murphy seconds. Geez, got a call roll, I guess. It's been moved and second. Johnson Bowles?
Aye.
Robert Aguirre?
Aye.
Laura Blevins?
Yes.
Paul Brockwell?
Aye.
Maya Castillo?
Aye.
Mark Embledge?
Aye.
Muhammad Islami?
Yes.
Sham Light?
Yes.
Barbara Little?
Yes.
Shelley Murphy?
Yes.
Blythe Scott?
Yes.
Marcy Sims?
yes.
Leonard Tango?
Yes.
Excellent.
And Mr. Chair, As you just skipped over, that's okay. I vote aye as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've missed you. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay.
Mr. Miller votes aye and the chair votes aye, so it's adopted unanimously. My apologies. The last item on the agenda, and these, I think we can, Sandy, do we do these as individual votes or a block vote or what? These resolutions? You're on mute, Sandy.
That's really up to you.
Okay. Okay, I'll note that we have, and you have before you, resolutions that are commending and recognizing members of this board who are rotating off. Kristen Cabral was appointed by Governor McAuliffe for a 5-year term. She served on the Education Outreach and Research Services. She chaired the Library Development Committee. Everyone who knows Kristen knows that she was an enthusiastic supporter of the Library of Virginia, has been active locally as well. And we commend her. David Skiles was appointed in 2013 by Governor McDonnell. He was reappointed by Governor McAuliffe. David has a background in government relations, and he was especially active with the legislature on budget items, worked hand in glove with Sandy. He was a member of the Archival Collections and Records Management Services Committee, the Library Development Committee, and Legislative and Finance. He chaired the board in 2018 to 2019. David is terrific, and he's a mainstay of the board's mission. And then Mark Embledge, who was with us, and we hate to see go. Mark has had a remarkable tenure with the board, first appointed by Governor Kane, and then reappointed by Governor McAuliffe. He's active professionally in education, literacy, and public policy. He served on the Archival Collections and Records Management Committee, the Public Library Development Committee, the Legislative and Finance Committee. He served as board chair. He's been active with the Foundation Board, and he is a longtime stalwart of the library and its mission. And look forward to Mark staying engaged in many ways, especially with the gala and other activities. So in the interest of time, is there a motion to take these three wonderful but individual commemorations in a block?
So moved.
Mr. Brockwell moves and Marcy Sims seconds. Any discussion on any of these individual resolutions? Hearing none, all in favor of adopting these resolutions, say aye. I gotta call the roll.
Sorry.
This is Audrey's fault that I have to call the roll every time.
I know.
Johnson Bowles.
Aye.
Robert Aguirre.
Aye.
Barb Levins.
Yes.
Brockwell.
Aye.
Maya Castillo.
Aye.
Mark Embledge.
Aye.
Muhammad Islami.
Yes.
Sam Light.
Yes.
Barbara Little.
Yes.
Mark Miller.
Aye.
Kelly Murphy.
Yes.
Blythe Scott.
Yes.
Marcy Sims.
Yes.
Leonard Tango.
Yes.
Chair votes aye, and they are passed unanimously. We thank all three for their service, and Mark Embledge, thank you for your service and support. I guess, and then we are now wrapping up. So old and new business. Let me call on Blythe Scott to say a word. She is about the foundation and where we are in terms of board support and all of that kind of stuff. Blythe.
All right, thank you very much. So Sandy actually sent out the foundation report previously, but I do have an update. 67% of the board has donated to the foundation. And I just wanted to encourage anyone who's left, so 67% leaves 4 people who have not donated. So I'd ask if you could quickly, before June 30th, make your fingers do the walking. That would be awesome. And I know that Scott has been doing wonderful things. I think he's on the call, or maybe he has left, but the foundation is really getting some wonderful leadership from Scott Dodson. And I'd like to actually call on Paul, who is also coming through as the liaison to the foundation when we are meeting again. Paul?
Well, I've solemnly sworn to do whatever Blythe tells me to, and to help encourage support for the Library of Virginia Foundation. I'm excited to take on this role with her and encourage you all to support as you're able. And if you're able to attend the Literary Awards, I had my first experience last fall, and it was an incredible evening and a great way to get a pulse on what's being written about Virginia and by Virginians, and stock up on your bookshelf.
Indeed. Thank you, Paul. And Kristen Cabral was the foundation, the board's liaison to the foundation, and Paul is her successor. The last thing I will say is, so as chair, I will make committee assignments in the near future, and then the nominating committee, that's the only, I can make the committee assignments. The nominating committee, I think I will also make, but the nominating committee requires a board vote, right, Sandy?
Yes.
We'll take that up at our next meeting. So, and again, the last thing I'll say also is to all of those who joined us, if folks joined us by YouTube, we are happy that you were with us, and we hope to be meeting in person in the future. We would welcome you physically at the library on the meeting dates that we have adopted. With that, Sandy, do you have anything to add? And then I'll ask the board members if they have anything else to add. Sandy?
No, I'll just say I'm so sorry to the 3 new board members to come on board at a time like this. And we will be in touch, in a few weeks once we reopen to the public, get that behind us, and sort of take a pulse. If you'd like to do an orientation that we normally do here in the building, if you'd rather do it by Zoom, we can do that, and then do the tour part when we can reassemble. But we definitely want to introduce you to the management team and get you fully up to speed, and apologize you had to be thrown in the deep end without that background.
Thank you, Sandy. Anything else from board members? Hearing none. Thank you for the nearly 2 hours that you have given us this morning. It was a long meeting, but a productive one, with lots of roll call votes, for which we apologize, but was necessary. Thank you very much. The meeting is now adjourned.
Have a great summer.
Stay safe, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.